Hi, I'm Liz Stinselli with Stinselli Advisors. I'm here again with Beth Strathman, who is a leadership and team coach. And a while ago, we talked about the differences between masculine and feminine energy in the workplace. And today we want to kind of continue that conversation with how can we be authentic and effective in light of the differences between this masculine and feminine energy that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So Beth, I wanted to kind of start off with kind of the key to the kind of opens the door to all the other things we're going to talk about. And this is being able to keep ourselves under control and respond rather than react in these situations. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. That is the key. And as someone who has throughout my whole life, but certainly my adult life, really struggled with that because I have a little temper sometimes, and so it's really easy for me if someone says something that I know is just complete nuts, right? Or inaccurate or whatever, and they're trying to sell it as true. It's really easy for me to go into that threat response and want to just read them the riot act, right? But for anybody, masculine or feminine, with masculine or feminine energy, that is not the right way to go. My response is to tend to lash out, but another reactive response would be to totally clam up, to want to leave the room and not say anything. So whatever your threat response is, whatever you go into when there's a fight or flight situation, be aware of that, because that is not going to serve you well if you're really trying to be an active participant in your organization in an authentic and responsive way. So you've got to really know your own body language, know when you're shutting down or know when you're getting angry, and what those body cues are for you, so that you can take a deep breath, calm down, and formulate a cogent response to whatever the situation is.
Absolutely. And I don't think a lot of people realize when we enter that fight or flight mode, when we're under that stress, we, feel that pressure. Our brains, our higher order thinking shuts down. We are now in survival mode. And, when you're wanting to really be able to make an impact, we have to be careful because what comes out of our mouth will be at a much more simplistic level than we ever intended when we're kind of in that mindset. But that kind of leads us into speaking with confidence. We want to make sure that when we do speak, we're not undermining ourselves right off the bat and kind of belittling what we have to say before we even say it.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 I think that is something that, of course, I see in myself too. Is sometimes when you you don't women don't want to appear as though they are better than others, because relationships are important to those with feminine energy, right? If your brain is kind of wired that way, and culturally we've been taught this as well, is the relationship is important. So we don't want to show any disrespect or make the other person feel less than, but we want to get our point across. So what we often do is we put a disclaimer on the front of whatever we're going to say, and we'll say something like, well, I might be the only person in the room who sees this or is thinking this, but, and then you say whatever. Or, I don't know a lot about this, but this is what I'm thinking. We put that disclaimer on the front end, which kind of really takes the air out of whatever we want to assert in the moment. So we need to be really careful about cutting ourselves off at the knees even before the words that we want to say come out of our mouths.
And we see that in women a lot more than we see it in men. We do see it in men on occasion, but that's something that it's a habit, and you got to catch yourself. You know, whatever you have to do to remind yourself. If you have to, you know, pinch your thumb every time you go to speak to remind yourself, under the table, to speak up with authority, speak up with confidence. right off the bat, until you can break that habit of, you know,
Yeah.
kind of playing down what you have to say. Um, you got to find a way to get around that habit and develop a new habit.
Yeah,
We
well,
also
I
wanted
was going to say
oh,
one other thing on that. Not only do we put stuff on the beginning of our sentences, we'll put a little question on the end. Like we'll say statement, 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 right? Or statement, 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 don't you think? Or, something on the end that we're questioning, we're going ahead and questioning what we just said for everybody else in the room. So I'll leave that there.
oh, you're so right there. We touched on this in our previous discussion, but I want to touch on it quickly again. Is that women or people with feminine energy tend to feel like they need to be an expert before they can speak up. We don't feel qualified to speak up unless we feel like we're a pro at this, and that is a huge mistake because we could spend our entire life striving for to reach the excellence that we feel like we need before we can speak. What do
Right.
you think?
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, and we did talk about this before. And, again, that is over time and with experience, knowing when good enough is good enough and being confident enough, as we were just talking about, to say, this is where I'm at now. This is the information I have now. And being open to any additional information, but going ahead and taking the risk to state whatever it is you want to state um, based on the information that's already available to you. But,
And being okay with being vulnerable. We have to stop being afraid to be vulnerable. We may say something and we may be mistaken. People are
yeah,
mistaken all the time. If you're mistaken, own up to it and say, you know I did not have all the information, or I misspoke. you know we think that people are going to look down on us for that, but that, you know it's a fact of life, and we need to be okay with that.
right.
So our final and biggest point: standing our ground and standing up for ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. This one can be hard because when you're in a room full, and not even full, but even if you're in a small group of 4 or 5 other individuals, small meeting, and let's say the majority of them are masculine energy, their tendency is going to want to dominate and show how powerful or smart they are, right? And so when you then assert something, you bring in your research, you bring in your data, and you're putting forth a conclusion or an interpretation of that information. Be expect to be challenged. Expect to be challenged by it. I mean, people are going to say, yeah, but what about this? Or have you really looked into this, fully? I mean, they're going to try to poke holes in whatever it is. That's the nature of things. And so you do need to stand your ground. So that means going in, you do need to be prepared, right? You can't just slack off on the preparation. As we were talking about, it doesn't need to be perfect, but you do need to be prepared. And, when people, you just have to have that solid conviction that no, this is what the data says. This is why I'm concluding this. And just keep sort of going back to relying on your data and what your conclusions are. And sometimes people, while you're even presenting your data, that masculine energy will interrupt you, right? They've got something to say. They got to move. It's back to that task and action oriented sort of energy of the masculine, and they want to get their idea out there, and so they might interrupt you. And so you have to stand your ground, as you were saying, and confidently and calmly, without reacting, as we were talking about before, say, just a minute, so and so. I'm going to finish my point, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say, right? But you have to call it out and not just sit back and shut your mouth, right? You've got the floor, you keep the floor, until your point is finished. What else have you seen around this idea of standing your ground?
I love that. Also, men are famous for this. So you speak up, you have make a point, you have a great idea, and then someone in the room feels like they need to restate your idea in their own words. And the next thing you know, now the conversation has turned to them, and now everyone's having a conversation about your idea, and you're kind of sitting back in the corner. Again, you you need to call them out on that. We don't want to be aggressive, but we want to be assertive and, speak up for ourselves. And, you know, excuse me, as to my point, yes, and make sure you get in onto that in on that conversation, and point out, I mean, you want to be a little subtle in the pointing out that, yes, that is what I just said. Um, Unless it's a really kind of already a hostile meeting, you may have to be a little hostile, but we like to handle it enough that we're not offending people in the room, and then seeing, see, this is why we don't want her in there, because look, see how she acts. So we have to kind of be careful how we handle it, but don't let them get away with it. Don't, because they will take your ideas, they will run with it, and they will get the credit for it.
Right. And so, and when you see that happen to somebody else, if you're in the room and somebody else's idea gets, co-opted or stolen or whatever, um, call it out. Say, hey, Jim, that's exactly the point that so and so was making before. And then turn to the person who originally had the idea and say, is there anything else you want to say on that? Right? So amplify it or redirect it back to the person who originally put that idea forth.
That is fantastic. I mean, as I'm going to say, as women, we need to kind of stick together. We need to support each other instead of um, falling into the role of men and stepping over other women in the room.
Right.
We really need to be helping each other, giving each other a hand up. So
Well,
great.
your male buddies can help out with that too, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So well, those are our ideas for how to be, authentic and effective in this sort of masculine feminine tug of war in the workplace. So regardless of where you are on the continuum and what your particular mix of masculine and feminine energy is, what other things have you seen in your workplace along these lines that have helped you or other people be effective? In whatever the culture is in your organization. Leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And for now, we'll let you go and have the rest of a great day.